Welcome to another episode of the Liberator podcast. This is episode 75 of the Liberator podcast. I'm here with James Silberman, and I'm Sam Riley. And we're very excited because this week we are joined by AIM Kansas, Jared Burdick, and Valley Scharping. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
So we've gotten to know you guys pretty well ever since, Jared, you came to our conference last year, and then we came to your conference a month after that conference. Yeah. So we know you guys pretty well. For anyone who doesn't know you guys, just tell us a little bit about who you are, how you became abolitionists, how AIM Kansas came to be, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I'll start to tell you a little bit about myself and how I became an abolitionist. I've been a Christian, raised in a Christian family my whole life. I was born again about 5 years ago, and abortion's always been something I've been raised around, the idea of being pro-life. And after I moved to where I live now in Kansas, I started to think a little bit more about evangelism and just grew in doctrine and theology. And one of the people that I watched a lot was Jeff Durbin, and I started seeing their videos of going to the abortion clinics, and I thought that's really cool. I've never heard of anybody doing that. I've been pro-life my whole life, but I just never thought about going and preaching the gospel there. So after that, I got signed up. I signed our church up for End Abortion Now and their church partnership program. They sent us some resources. Then I got plugged into their Mighty Networks app and found out there's people in Kansas City who are going there. So Kevin Myers, everybody knows Kevin, the AMBA guy.
Yep, he's been on the show before.
Yeah, yep. So Kevin's great. Another guy that goes there regularly is Clifton Bogie. And so I got in touch with them. I was like, hey, I just want to go out and check out what you guys are doing. And I went out there. Me and my wife were in Kansas City for a weekend, and they were there. So I was like, I just want to drop by and see what they're doing at the abortion clinics and see what this is like. So we went for like 20 minutes, and God just kind of broke my heart about it and opened my eyes and showed me that, hey, you really got to do more about this. This is going on in your state. So I was like, I went home and I'm like, I don't know, there might be an abortion clinic in Manhattan, like right where I live. There might be an abortion clinic there, I don't even know. So I looked it up. There's only 2 cities with abortion clinics. There's Overland Park, which is next to Kansas City, and there's Wichita. And so from there, I realized that we're 2 hours away from those abortion clinics. I can't really go regularly to the clinics and preach the gospel there. So find out what else I can do. And I realized that you guys kind of have, the abolition movement growing in Oklahoma. People like End Abortion Now are growing in Arizona. All these different places in the country are doing something with this. They're really doing something with it. And so I was really like, we got like 4 or 5 people in Kansas that are doing something. So what can I do to support them? Because I can't really go to the clinics very much. And it's hard to mobilize my church to go 2 or 3 hours, to go witness there. So that's when I put together the conference. I knew you guys were having your conference. I came and visited that. So a few months prior to that, I just wanted to have someone come and speak to my church. Just, we have a small church with, 30, 40 congregants. I just wanted a guest speaker to come and talk to us about what it means to go to the abortion clinics. How do you approach abortion biblically? So I talked to my pastor about it. He was completely on board. And so we started planning what was originally going to be just a training session with our church. Just going to have somebody. I didn't know who, so I just reached out to people at Apologia. Me and my wife went to vacation there, so we went and visited them on a Sunday, and I got to know some of their people. Met Dusty Marshall, who's a member of Apologia, and asked him, hey, you want to come out and speak? Because like, it's something you do. You go to the clinics a lot. You're involved in this. It's like, yeah, I'll come out and speak. So I got him to come out. I thought, hey, if we're having an out-of-state speaker come out, let's make the most of this. Let's try to make it into a conference. Then about that same time, Valley, and he'll tell you more about this, him and people from his church started going to the abortion clinics. And they kind of went for like 2 months, and we never really, met each other. Finally, I hooked him up. We live in the same town, but go to different churches. So finally, we hooked up over that, and I kept planning the conference, and we ended up having 150 people at our first conference. You guys came to that.
It was really well attended, yeah.
Yeah, so that was...
We're thinking like St. George, Kansas. I don't even know if there's a couple hundred people in St. George.
It's tiny.
But there were a couple hundred at that conference. Yeah. I mean, it was. You guys did a good job putting that on.
Yeah, it was just totally just God brought that together. I didn't really know anybody or know what I was doing. But I think we had like 15 churches present.
Yeah.
So it really got the ball rolling. And my whole goal with that is I started to see that, there was other churches who are getting involved and are actively in this fight. And I thought, we really need to be, wise about our resources. There's only a few of us that are doing this. And like we'll talk about later, we're facing not only the abortion establishment, but also the pro-life establishment and the challenges we face there. So we need to really pool our resources and try to be wiser about what we're doing. So I talked to my pastor about it. Why don't we start an official ministry of our church, Lighthouse Baptist Church?
Right.
So out of that, I realized let's pool the people from the conference that are in our local churches and have just a multi-church ministry out of Lighthouse Baptist under the headship of our elders. But out of that came AIM-KS. So I'll let Valley kind of tell you a little bit more about. He became an abolitionist. Then we can kind of tell you guys about what AIM-KS is, how it came to be, and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Valley Scharping. So I actually grew up pro-choice in a New Age family, which is a religion that is kind of pantheistic and generally very liberal theologically. And so I actually didn't become Christian until I was about 15, and my dad said something really impactful to me about abortion. It was the first time I'd ever really thought about it, but he said it's not the baby's fault in the case of a rape victim being impregnated. And I was like, that's so obvious. Of course it's not the baby's fault, but I just never thought about it. And
Was he New Age at that time too? Or?
no, he had just become a Christian.
Become a Christian. Okay.
Yes. And I had just become a Christian. And so that changed my whole perspective, because even when I became a Christian, I was like, well, a lot of these exceptions are still fine.
Yeah.
Until he basically, rebuked me as a father should. And I was like, okay. So my eyes were really opened at that point. And then about 2013, I discovered a Facebook page called Abolish Human Abortion and a YouTube channel.
Uh-oh.
Going straight for the good stuff.
Yeah. And I loved it. I loved all the videos. I was like, man, people really do this. People really care about this and are actually doing something about it. Because I was part of a church that wasn't evil or anything, but just full of people who didn't do any street evangelism or anything like that at all. So it was like really refreshing to see that boldness.
Yeah.
So I loved the videos, loved the Facebook page. Didn't agree with everything. I didn't understand all of it either. And the frustrations with pro-life people, I started to see that more, and I was like, I don't really get what's going on at all. So fast forward to 2017, and I'm reading through the law again. I had read it when I first became a Christian, but it all went over my head. So I'm reading for the second time, and I'm like, I get to Leviticus 20, 1 through 5, which is one of the most important passages on child sacrifices, if not the most, in my opinion, because it changed my whole perspective of God takes this very seriously. It is a crime just like any murder. It just is. In fact, there's a severity to it that God deals with it because it's parents who are supposed to care for their children.
Yeah, that's the one. If you turn your eyes away from it, I'll cut you off from your family as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you seek not to punish those who have sacrificed their children, you and your family will also be cut off.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I was part of a bunch of pro-life groups on Facebook. And so there were comments about, like, what should the punishment be for abortion? And I was like, well, the death penalty, right, guys? I was seriously just completely naive, and it was a firestorm. And that woke me up. I was like, okay, there's something going on here. Like, I didn't go, let's go just kill all the women. It wasn't some tirade like that. It was just like, okay, the proper lawful response to murder is capital punishment, according to God. And very many angry people responded to that. So then fast forward a couple more years, and a few friends of mine had watched Babies Are Murdered Here and Babies Are Still Murdered Here, the documentaries.
Are those people that Sam and I would know, or are those different friends?
Yes, Daniel and Rebecca Hutchison.
Awesome.
And Daniel's a pastor in Nebraska now, so he's not necessarily part of our Kansas group, but still a close brother. And they were convicted to go. I had another brother, Jason Clapp, who was like feeling convicted, like he was maybe going to spend his bachelor party to go to the Planned Parenthood. None of us had ever done any of this, so we were like, Jason, calm down. Take it easy, your bachelor party, dog. But So we didn't end up going for his bachelor party, but we shortly, not too long after that, we were kind of convicted we should all go. So we took a group. We went when Kevin was going to go, Kevin Myers, as you mentioned. And I think everybody cried that first time, and it really broke us to see what was going on there. And so, sparing a lot of the details, we just decided to keep doing that. And then we met Jared and other abolitionists who were going there, and we were like, we need to organize. We need to get started and take this seriously.
That's cool. So talk about then from there to the kind of the development of AIM Kansas, and you can explain what AIM stands for and what you guys are doing.
So AIM KS stands for Abortion is Murder Kansas. So following the conference that we held, actually leading up to it a few times, we kind of all met together, helped organize the conference, but also helped organize outreach times to the clinic. And we kind of realized we really need to formulate a ministry. And, one of the key elements of abolitionism is that it's led by the church. So we felt it was really, really important that this was a ministry that was under the headship of a elder ruling church, and the elders were engaged and willing to support us and advise us. So that was our church, my church. My pastor, I talked to him about it, and he was totally supportive of it, all about it. So then it was just, how do we do this? How do we figure this all out? Because there's lots of different organizations going on right now who are, I think, all trying to do, whether or not they agree completely on every ideology, they're organizations that I admire and I learned from. So I kind of looked at that and tried to figure out, what do we do? We're not close enough to the clinics to have just like a regular schedule where we go out there and do that. I praise God we don't have one closer to us, but it is actually a huge recruiting asset to get the people out there so that they can actively see what's going on.
That's what it takes to wake people up sometimes, like seeing it for yourselves, seeing just the hard hearts, and just being in close proximity. Like that person there is walking in with a child and going out without one. It opens the eyes. Oh yeah, for sure. So we just was like, okay, well. We know that that's going on in Kansas City and Wichita, and like in Wichita we have one guy who I think is a solid, gospel believing brother who is standing up to it, and then in Kansas City there's a handful of them, and it kind of opened my eyes. Okay, we got to get the church on board. Some of these guys, either they're doing this full time already, or they're already they're doing everything they can. They need more support. We need to find a way to get the church to wake up. But then we also realized that the legislative side is extremely important. Obviously, we need to be pushing abolition legislation, and we need to end it there, and it has to end there. If we don't stop it at our state capitals, then that's we really can't accomplish as much as we're called to do by God. So in my opinion, so there's four leaders of our organization, and as we were coming to this after the conference, we all sat down and kept meeting, and there's about 30 of us at that time. I think we had a pretty good amount of people that were there. So we decided on a name, we decided on the structure, so we decided on Abortion is Murder Kansas. We spent a whole meeting voting over different names, and we came to that name because we wanted our very name to just simply communicate the truth as easily as we could. What does God say about abortion? That's it. So if all they do is just hear who we are, we want them to hear God's will in this.
And that is the most anti-pro-lifey type thing you can do, because even the pro-life term itself is sort of vague. It doesn't really say anything about the severity of. It's
just positive reinforcement. We're not gonna try to focus on any of the negative issues within this. And it is not. I mean, I feel like as abolitionists we have to nuance this to death. But should go with that being said, it's not our goal to be unnecessarily harsh or to just be crude and brash. It's our goal to get to the truth of the matter as quickly as possible, especially, and this is all just reinforced after going out to the clinics, and also we do cultural outreach in our own town, because there's clinics there, but there's still abortions going on, people getting abortions, and so we just wanted something that communicates the truth as quickly as possible, and it gets to the matter. We want to know who's on board with us, who's really got our backs, who can we support, and who do we need to come alongside and encourage and equip a little more. And then we also need to know who's against us. Just we know people stand. It's not about trying to make enemies. It's about realizing that we are a world made of light and darkness. And the Word of God divides the truth. Let's stand upon those principles that divide that as quickly and directly as possible. So that's why we just chose the name Abortion is Murder, KS. The goal here, and this is one of the things to clarify with that, the goal here is not to become a real central organization in Kansas. Our goal is to stay within the boundaries of our local community under our church, and help other ministries like ours raise up. So, we're not trying to necessarily start, more AIM chapters or anything. That's not our goal. Our goal is to help equip other churches to do their own thing the way God leads them to do it, and following the principles that we believe Scripture lays down.
And perhaps lead the charge, but with other local groups toward legislation ends.
Yeah. So if you are watching this, if you're in Kansas, please talk to your elders, talk to your pastors, and get them in touch with these guys, and we can get some more churches on board with you guys and get things rolling in Kansas. It'll be really good to see.
Yeah. So that's the name of it. And then from there, kind of the structure of our organization. So we're a ministry of our church. We're not just strictly a political organization. We're not a crisis pregnancy center either. But we realize there's kind of 4 areas that need to be approached from all fronts. There's 4 battle fronts against abortion: legislative, cultural, at the abortion clinic. So just gospel-centered outreach there. And then also just supporting parents. So in a way that we do kind of have a goal to be able to have resources available if it is our ability to help parents who truly are in need, who are abortive-minded, but there's a way we can help them, then we want to be able to have that. So those are the 4 areas that we've tried to tackle. And for that, we have 4 leaders who are all in charge of that. And that's kind of the test run idea of structure we have. And we did that because I realized as few people as we have, we don't really have the resources to have a separate Free the States organization here, and you guys have Free the States and you have Rescue Those here, and you have different organizations who can kind of all tackle it all. Maybe one day we can be to that point. I hope we could, but we wanted to keep everything here and utilize everybody's gifts and talents as much as we can. So we're still working all that out and kind of seeing how that structure is going to maintain moving forward. But so far, we've accomplished a lot with it.
So to talk about the growth of the movement in Kansas, how are things going for you guys, and the movement more generally than just in Kansas?
Want me to get one? Okay, I'll get that one. So the history of kind of the abolition movement in Kansas, the abortion abolition movement in Kansas, I think the first abolitionist would be Kevin Myers. He's kind of the guy that's really formally kind of the guy that started it.
He's been around a while.
Yes, he started down in Florida, and then he moved back to Kansas City. And he was on the Missouri side, and then now he's on the Kansas side. So he's been the guy who's been out there the longest. I don't know how long, but it's been a while. And outside of him, there's been a few that have come alongside him or have been involved with him. But there hasn't been any formal organizations. We are the first abolitionist organization to really start. Now, there's been a few smaller conferences and rallies, but nothing like what we're trying to put on this year. We're really trying to get the ball rolling and get things moving. So the abolition movement is really just starting. Just starting. I mean, we're just miniature compared to what you guys have here going in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of work to be done. Just trying to cultivate the soil and get more people on board and spread the word, and we're just getting started.
Well, one of the things I noticed about just what's going on in Kansas is it seems like you guys have a really young, enthusiastic, energetic crowd. It's great. Kevin Myers has been out there for so long, and now he's got all these 20-something guys and gals who come along and are helping him, and it's really, really cool to see.
I know he's excited about you guys.
He's praise God. We're glad to be there. To be an encouragement. He's been such an encouragement to us, and just I've never seen a man who can just spew Scripture so much. I'm just off the top of his head. He has so much memorized, and he always has such a gracious response to just anyone and everybody.
Nice little slogans too.
He's got
on the corner of happy and homicide. I love that one.
He's like a beast mode dad. He's got it down. So we're definitely a younger movement. One of the focuses for us this year is try to get more pastors involved. Just got to get more pastors involved. There's already a handful who are pretty dedicated to it. But we just got to have the resources and tools there available for them to be able to still continue to pastor the way they're pastoring. And, like you guys have maybe dealt with this, being in a rural state, if you divide Nebraska and Kansas down the middle, the western half of that, there's only 2 Baptist pastors who are full-time salary.
Wow.
And all the western half of Nebraska and Kansas. So as much as, the rural states are your churches can have an impact, those pastors are just overwhelmed. And we've seen that. I'm just trying to work with guys, and they've got so much on their plate. Even if they have a small congregation, so much on their plate, being bivocational. They're passionate about this, but just got to have the resources there available for them to be able to make as big of an impact as they can.
Yeah. Exciting. You got recently David Van Beber moving in.
Yeah.
He's a really good Reformed, presuppositional, abolitionist guy that will be there too. So
Yep. I got to have
hopefully
lunch with him sometime this month. We're going to meet up and start working with them. Yeah.
So we've talked a bit about the movement generally, probably more in cultural terms. Let's talk the political side.
Yep.
So what are the roadblocks? Because I know you guys have spent some time at the Capitol with some different legislators. What roadblocks are you running into?
There's a lot, and part of it is cultural. So where to start? So our good friend April Cromer, she has authored a Kansas abortion ban, and for the past several years.
And she's not a politician, but she's a
yes. She runs campaigns,
right,
and has successfully elected a few
right.
Legislators for Kansas.
Yep.
So yeah, and we love April. She's a God-fearing, Bible-loving sister in Christ, and totally on board ideologically with abolition.
Yep.
And so she's authored this Kansas abortion ban, and had sponsors at times. Unfortunately, even men who have run promising that they would sponsor the abortion ban if she got him elected, but then as political pressure mounted, pulled out of that.
And that pressure is coming from
Kansans for Life, almost exclusively. Which again, all brothers and sisters in Kansans for Life, we love you. We love our Christian brothers and sisters, even if we do believe there are errors in a movement that is secular largely. And so, but right now, Kansans for Life is demonstrably an obstacle to abolition in Kansas, because they have part of that was a threat to not elect, to make sure that this representative was not elected again if they put through this abortion ban.
So Kansans for Life told him, if you put forward this bill that April wrote, we are going to campaign against you and make sure that you're not reelected in your district.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. They did it to him, and then on this last session, I think she had 3 possible sponsors, and all of them were pushed back out, and they all did.
And it's an interesting. I think that issue right there really underscores an important issue that needs to continue to be a trend, and as far as the abolitionist legislators go, is running on abolitionist platforms. Because then they get all of that pressure during the campaigns, and so you kind of, it's sort of a trial by fire. It's like they're gonna, if they actually survive the test of getting through a campaign as an abolitionist, they're going to be pushing bills that are righteous and good, and they're not going to be so easily swayed by any kinds of pressures once they get in. They've already went through it. They tried to sabotage them during their campaigns, and they already know, this is what they're going to try to do, and I already overcame it. I'm already in office. So that's I think an important issue as well, and
it is.
I think that going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more legislators running as abolitionists in Kansas, and hopefully that won't be an issue going
Political
forward.
IOUs are worthless. I mean, if they're saying I'll be faithful after you get me elected, even to voters, whether it's to April or not, that's a surefire promise that's not going to be kept.
Because it's either way, you're basically having a legislator lie to voters in order to get them elected. Like, they're saying they're less than what they are. They're saying that they're a pro-lifer. They're going to pass all kinds of pro-life things. This is sort of the strategy that a lot of people have adopted, and then they get elected and they're supposed to do the righteous thing. But then, what you're doing is you're telling a false report to all these voters saying, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, and then you're saying that you're going to switch to do something else afterwards, and that's just dishonest all around. What we need to do is say exactly what God says. We need to run on platforms that are heralding His word. That's part of the reason I love your guys' name so much, because it's like, abortion is murder. Now, that is a biblical statement. That's a statement that cuts to the heart of things, and it's not going to it might make people mad, but it's going to be a good anger that comes up because they're convicted. So
on that topic, I think you guys saw that with like the Dan Fisher campaign. When you campaign on something that does wonders to spread the movement
Yeah.
and to wake people up. And it's really easy to be discouraged and pessimistic about abolition, especially just in regards to politics and trying to get the culture to change, because we're really fighting an uphill battle. But it's you just always got to remember that there's always more people out there that are on your side than you realize.
Yeah.
And if you can campaign on it, you're gonna have a lot of challenges. But you might find that out of that, you might find your biggest supporters for them.
Yeah.
And we have seen this, and it's probably the one critique that I've received talking to legislators in our state is, I told them, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what God's word says. This is the right thing. They'll go, yeah. There isn't a single abolitionist in my district. Not a single one. None. I've never heard from one. What do you say to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm still gonna try to get them to be faithful to God's word.
Right.
But I also understand you are there to represent the people, and you don't have any people that you're elected to represent that want this right now, and you should.
Yeah.
They're out there, but they probably aren't as engaged, and so it's our job to get those people moving. Get the wheels going.
Yeah, and regarding the 4 areas that you guys are focusing on, it's surprising always how much the cultural and the legislative overlap. Because as soon as you start engaging on the legislative or the political front, as a Christian, as someone who's saying Jesus is Lord and he is on his throne and he governs how I legislate and he governs what I'm allowed to put forward in a bill, that starts to shift everything culturally really quickly, because people start coming out of the woodwork going, I didn't even know this could happen. I didn't know someone could do this. It's a bit like, when someone chooses to run their business in a Christian way, people take notice. Like John Speed, when he went and he said, I'm not going to take in taxes today for my bookstore because of this horrible law that was put forward. Yeah. It sort of blows up. It goes viral, and people are like, I don't even know Christians could do this. I didn't know they could be this political in their religious beliefs. And it really breaks down a lot of barriers in people's minds that just say you have to remain neutral. You must cater to the secular worldview that is predominant in this culture. It really destroys that myth quickly, and then people sort of come out of the woodworks to support those candidates. Yeah.
All right, so getting back to the main roadblock you guys are facing here, so back to Kansans for Life, and to anyone who's been watching this show or is at all familiar with abolition bills, right? It's like when I pitched the question, who's the roadblock, everyone basically knew, because it's Kansans for Life in Kansas, it's Oklahomans for Life in Oklahoma, right? It's that is the group. They're affiliated with National Right to Life, right. and so that is the opposition. And so just talk about your experiences with them and kind of where they're at and why they're doing the things they're doing.
Yeah. Well, so first off, KFL, Kansas for Life, is the largest PAC in the state. It wields a ton of influence, especially as, and I don't necessarily mean this negatively, but as a conscience-soothing PAC. A lot of people who don't want to or can't, I want to give the benefit of the doubt for very busy people or something like that, but get involved in the fight for abortion, or against abortion, give money to Kansas for Life, because it's an easy way of being involved without a ton of effort and time.
Hands on.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done my part.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the way that I participated in against this Holocaust as well for a long time. A huge portion of Kansas also just gets the flyers on how to vote from KFL.
Yep.
And I used to do that. I just voted down the line who they told me to, until I found out from my pastor that they don't always interview how consistently principled their candidates they're pushing are. Yeah. For example, one woman had not opined on abortion at all. So then my pastor reached out to her and said, "You're on KFL's list. How do you feel about abortion?" And she said, I have no opinion, no comment. She's running as a Republican, right? So, but she knew if she was Republican, she was perceived as pro-life. She's going to get KFL support. She didn't have to say anything or be faithful at all.
Just no standards whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, praise God, my pastor actually tried to run against her. Very last minute, did not succeed. But that taught me a lesson of don't just trust this list. But I still did volunteer for them after that. So I volunteered at the Kansas State Fair, which is a huge deal in Kansas. They had a big booth, and we were trying to get signatures for this petition, for It's Not the Value of Them Both bill, which we will probably talk about later, but a different thing before they moved on to a different strategy. but less than abolitionists, not consistent, not biblical.
Right.
But I didn't read all of it. I just assumed, it's pro-life. All right, this is good. I got like hundreds of signatures that day. I spent the whole day doing it. We had several who are now part of AIM with us. They're volunteering also.
Yeah.
And then we learned about another booth at that Kansas State Fair that was they're proposing an abolition petition. And we were like, what? What's happening? And people were like, because people were coming over and saying, we already signed
that's
it.
better.
Well, basically.
So just knowing you and your crowd, you probably didn't like the idea of, wait, we're the milquetoast ones? These guys are hardcore? Just knowing you guys, I can't imagine that went over well with your group.
We were upset. We were really upset because people were coming over and saying, we already signed the thing over there. And we're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They're like, well, there's another petition, pro-life petition over there. They didn't know, So
Right.
we went over and checked it out, and we talked with these people, and it was strangely a Catholic group. So it's not a group I'm aware of to this day.
We don't really know who they were.
Don't know who they were, but they got a booth. But at the very least, they challenged me to look at what I was getting signatures for, which was saying inconsistently, like a heartbeat is a standard for life, at least to protect, and we can compromise on the rest of lives, baby lives.
So this is some anti-incrementalist Roman Catholics, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Like that. Yeah.
Rare birds.
Yes,
Yeah.
very rare. To this day, we don't know any. But that got me thinking, like, man, I don't know. So I stopped. I was like, I'm not getting any more signatures for this. We left. And we tried to talk with the other KFL folks, and they were kind. They're like, what? No, that's not right. Ours is for, like to abolish all abortion or something. And they just didn't know. People and so there is an innocence there. But there were others who were like, well, but it's because strategically we can't just abolish abortion. We can't ban abortion. And that just didn't sit right with me. I was like, that's not how I think. That's not scripturally how we deal with repentance. We don't think, well, we can't repent all at once. That would be too costly. Christ says, cut your right hand off. Right. So that's how my mindset was kind of changed. And so, I did not go back to KFL after that or volunteer or vote down their list anymore. But I didn't, this was a year before we started, so I didn't really know exactly what to do. Now, right as we started AIM,
You want to talk about it? You can talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so valuable amendment. That's what you're...
I was going to go with so there was a KFL chapter opened locally in my city,
Right.
Which is right by Jared City, so our city basically, and by a family in my church, and we have a very small church, right? So there's a lot of room to butt heads basically, and so we are starting kind of irrespective, not spurred on by each other, but these two groups that we're realizing, oh man, there's going to be differences here. And that started to come out and just relational tension, and I want to be charitable not from us. We were willing to still be friends. We were like, can we sit down? Can we talk about this? Can we work through scripture? Can we pray together? And there was a more hostility from their end, unwillingness to be a friend, started to cut us off, eventually moved to a different church, partially because of how upset they were that part of our church was abolitionists. Not even our elders. Like, for example, not all our elders at my church are on board with abolition. So it wasn't like our church just went, you have to be abolition or get out,
Yeah.
So there was just like, man, this tension is heightening like crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was really personal immediately too. It's easy to kind of cut off KFL because I don't go to the state fair, but once a year or something. But it was like, man, this is causing division in our church. So that's nothing.
It's such a reoccurring story, that one. It's you try to come to the table patiently, and you try to do everything kindly towards people that are sort of in your circle that are pro-life. I know that when I was dipping my toe into the abolitionist pond in the beginning, the first time I did that, I was threatened with firing, and then the second time, my friend Austin was fired, and I had to quit. So, I found that it really doesn't matter, and it's often said that abolitionists are too harsh, they're too mean, they're all this stuff, and it oftentimes does not matter at all whether or not an abolitionist is being the kindest person on earth.
Yeah.
It's the conviction of it. It's like we do not want you holding us to this hard standard that says we're only going to support legislation that is righteous, that is good. Like people don't like that because it's such a high bar, and there's so much stuff that we want to engage in that is less than righteous, right?
Yeah.
Less than good.
Yeah.
So in other words, unrighteous. And that's convicting. And so that, So
Yeah.
I identify with that story a lot.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our listeners do too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's I personally haven't had as much engagement with Kansans for Life. When I came to the abolitionist movement and I started to engage with abortion more, I kind of was already aware of some of the differences I was going to have with Kansans for Life, so I didn't really even try. I still want to try to reach out as much as we can and work with anybody who's willing to work with us. I don't know. Do you guys have Tim Cole on your podcast, or do you just interview him?
He wrote an article for our website.
He wrote an article.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Tim is probably, out of all of us, Kevin and April also have had a lot of engagement with Kansans for Life and their leadership.
Yeah.
But Tim was going to be a speaker for the Value Them Both Amendment, which is the next
Right.
thing we'll talk about here. Is the next big obstacle that the Kansans for Life are using to postpone abolition is the Value Them Both Amendment. And this is an amendment in response to the 2019 Supreme Court ruling, state Supreme Court ruling, saying that Kansans have a right to abortion.
Yeah, not just a bill. It's amending the Constitution.
Yes.
So it's sort of bedrock type legislation.
If this passes, it's pretty permanent. As hard as it is it's taken 3 years just to get it passed. It'll be on the voter ballot this August, and if it passes, it will be even harder to get it off.
Yeah.
And we can just kind of talk about some of the reasons that we are not supporting it. I should have pulled up the actual language of it, but I can summarize it. The actual language literally says, in response to the Supreme Court ruling, I understand responding to the Supreme Court ruling. I think it's a good thing.
Kansas Supreme Court.
As the background, Kansas
Kansas
Supreme Court said that you guys cannot regulate abortion.
Yeah, well, it says
you can't
it says specifically that Kansans have a right
to abortion.
to an abortion.
Yeah.
So the pro-life leadership came back by saying, so basically what this does legally is it keeps us from being able to pass any regulations. We still could nullify, still could impeach the Supreme Court justices, but that was never even attempted. I brought it up to a couple representatives and chatting with them, and they just straight up were like, "There's no way we get the votes. Don't even talk about it. Like just don't even. It's worthless."
Yep, the courts are king in America.
Yeah.
And any resistance against them, the legislators don't like doing because they've been so accustomed to just treating the Supreme courts of the federal government and the state government, just treating the courts in general as king. And that is the view. And so standing up to them in any way is not going to be popular, whether it be nullification or whether it be impeachment, which is really sad because that's where most of the evil is coming from. There are evil laws being passed, certainly, but a lot of it is coming from court decisions. So
And I really want to underscore the insanity of just the situation you're in. The Kansas legislators are convinced, and probably for a reason, that it's harder to get rid of evil Supreme Court justices in Kansas than it is to amend the Constitution of Kansas, which is
it's
nuts.
crazy.
The Constitution is the bedrock thing, right? That's the thing that's supposed to be governing everything, and the Supreme Court justices are secondary to that. But it's harder to get rid of them than it is to amend the very foundation of the laws in Kansas, which is crazy, I think.
Yeah, it is, and it whether or not it's really true. Like I think if they really tried that, I don't know how that would all flesh out. The reality is, I agree. Yeah, we don't have the votes. That doesn't change the fact that you have Supreme Court justices who literally think it's okay to murder children. And these are the people that we're going to try to think are going to follow the Constitution. So their solution is to try to go around them. So by passing this amendment, they believe that this basically gets the Supreme Court out of the equation in our state. It gets the state Supreme Court out of the equation, and now we can come back and do what the Value Them Both says it wants us to do. And it's an explanatory statement. It says that Kansans have a right to regulate abortion through their elected representatives. And it's that statement right there and the way we believe it will be interpreted, the way we know based off of past presidents, based off of how the courts in the past have interpreted that, because the courts are still going to have to, they're still going to have some roles to play in this. Doesn't just completely remove them completely.
And the way it's intended to be interpreted as well.
So so our position is, and our fear is, so right now we have a House and Senate majority, Republican majority, but the moment that switches, they're going to exploit this amendment for everything they can. And one of the ways that it could be interpreted, and we believe it would be in that case, say if something happens like we've seen in Colorado, went from an extremely conservative state and it's flipped in less than 10 years. If that happens here in Kansas, which I could see it very easily happening, If that happens here in Kansas and we have a pro-choice or pro-abortion majority, they would exploit that amendment to say that because you have the right to regulate it, we're going to regulate it all the way up partial birth. You could regulate it all the way up partial birth. That's still a regulation.
Yeah.
Right. That's still a regulation. It's still some type of limitation. You can just put a limitation as far back as you want. It doesn't stop it. It doesn't abolish it.
Yeah.
And then it could even go further than that, and it could prevent us from abolishing it. So even if we wanted to abolish it and we used strictly abolitionist language, which is what we'll talk about here shortly with the bill that we have, the Kansas abortion ban, if the Supreme Court came to that, they say, well, this isn't regulation, this is abolition. And they could rule just on a technicality that they define that differently.
Yeah.
And they could say that our Constitution guarantees the right for the citizens to regulate abortion. So the legislator can't come in and abolish it because they have the right to regulate it.
Right.
I think the other thing it does too is it gives your Supreme Court, your wicked Kansas Supreme Court, ammunition and a good argument against your bill. Because they can say, wait, this says you have a right to regulate abortion. And you're saying it's your organization's called Abortion is Murder Kansas. How is this consistent with our Constitution? If it's allowed that a state regulate murder, then it's not really murder.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they can't be murder.
Exactly.
Because no state has a right to regulate whether you or me are shot down in the street and say whether or not that's good or bad.
Exactly.
Right? They have to say equal protection. They were innocent. They were murdered. We have to protect them. But if you say this about abortion, you're saying the opposite of abortion is murder.
Yeah.
So they then have a constitutional argument for why you cannot ban abortion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's our reason why we are not supporting it. In fact, we are opposing it because we believe that at any moment, really, our state is kind of a flip between a blue and a red. It tends to go red, but there is still it could very easily go blue.
You guys have a Democrat.
We've always had pretty much
Yeah.
always historically had a Democrat governor, and we usually have a Republican legislator. But right now, I don't really. I could see it going the other way very easily.
Yeah.
And there was no need to put the word regulate in there.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it just said that Kansans,
Yeah.
Kansan does not have the right to an abortion, which is what the first statement says. It's the next statement that clarifies that they have the right to regulate. If it just said you don't have a right to an abortion, I'd be like, okay, great. That would get the Supreme Court out of the way in a way that kind of works.
It's at least truthful.
Yeah, it's at least honest, right?
Yeah.
But this just really this is we're still working out how we're exactly definitionally approaching it because we want to be gracious. I know people who are supporting of it and just genuinely they've sought legal advice and they genuinely think that it will be interpreted in a way that is going to help the fight against abortion.
And I think part of it too with people supporting this is they don't have any kind of sense of risk about any of this stuff because as far as their long-term expectations, it's hopeless, sort of. It's until the Supreme Court of the United States changes their mind, we're not going to abolish anything. Yeah. And so their short-term solutions for problems are not even considering the long term because it doesn't matter ultimately. It's like, well, the Supreme Court changes their mind, then we can abolish abortion. Yeah. So you have organizations that just do not think that much about any kind of risk that they're taking because they don't actually adopt a very hopeful philosophy that says we don't have to listen to the Supreme Court. We can just abolish it immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. I mean, there's literally just this ingrained mentality that the best we can do is kick the can down the road. Yeah. That's the best we can do. So if for now we can try to skirt the Supreme Court a little bit, not address the real issue, not really try to have just laws, then that's okay. And that's that kind of brings us into like the next issue. It's been 3 years since this has been, the Valuable Amendment has been sponsored?
Something
3
like
years?
that,
Yeah,
sure.
so it was voted, and then last year it finally passed the House and the Senate. And they could have passed it. They could have put it on the voters' ballot for this last August, 2021. They didn't. They intentionally chose to postpone this a year. Now, keep in mind that the Kansans for Life and other organizations are campaigning, using this as a campaign tool, saying that the Value Them Both Amendment will save lives. It will save lives, even though this amendment doesn't have any act or clause. It won't do anything against abortion.
Nothing happens as soon as
Nothing
it's passed.
happens. It just basically puts us back to 2019 status quo, previous to the Supreme Court, and not a single abortion that happens in the state of Kansas will be altered. Everything we see at the abortion clinics is going to continue on. So there's no lives saved. What they're saying that is a typical propaganda, which I just think is completely dishonest. Is that best case scenario down the road we'll pass better legislation, which might restrict it a little further, and we might get a few less abortions every year.
Yeah.
And again, it's not equal protection. It's not true justice. But it's not even lives saved.
I think
so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think another evidence that they were willing to shoot their own amendment in the foot, not just putting it off a whole year, but is they wrote in it, it says subject to the United States Constitution, which if you know how that means, the Roe v. Wade has interpreted infallibly in their, in the court's view, that abortion is a right. And so they're basically saying, but really this amendment doesn't mean anything. At the very end, just a tagline. We're not going to go against the federal courts. So
there's so many. I mean, it's really just a facade, and then they push it down a year. They had the opportunity. If it's going to save all these lives, they're going to save. And this would be my challenge, but just my humble, heartfelt challenge to anybody who's in Kansans for life, or who is on the fence with the Value Them Both Amendment. You need to really challenge and look deeply into the authors and the leadership's intent on this. If it's really going to save lives. All right, we're not going to agree on equal justice there. But if your goal is just to save lives, I understand coming from that. There was a time when that was my main, way of understanding, and calculating what we're supposed to do. It's just how many lives can we save? I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand where you're coming from. But if that's the case, why do they postpone this a year? Yeah, Kansas. Last I checked the numbers, it's a little over 7,000 abortions a year. Yeah. So if this is going to save lives, why did we postpone this a year? Didn't have to. Could have been on the August ballot. The whole reason they did it is because we have another election this year, and this is their campaign tool.
Yeah, and they being the candidates who are running for office as Republicans, because they know that one of the best tools to get elected in a Republican district is to say, look at how pro-life I am. Yep. And so campaigning in tandem with, and at the same time that this amendment is going to help all of our, these pro-life heroes. Yeah. But how much of a pro-life hero are you if that matters more to you than something that you're saying is going to save lives, even though their perspective is all wrong? Yeah. They're saying it's going to save lives.
Mm-hmm. And it's really it sets up a lose-lose situation for people that want to see abortion abolished, because if it passes, it's a big roadblock towards abolition. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't pass, you now have a lot of legislators saying the voters of Kansas don't want this. They don't want any kind of regulations on abortion. They don't want abortion to be abolished. Yep. They don't even want our milquetoast increments, right? They don't want any of that stuff. Yeah. And so now they have this excuse to say voters didn't want this, even if voters voted it down because they didn't like exactly all the things that we don't like about the bill. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it really sets up this lose-lose situation, and it is the issue of like answering the fool according to his folly. You take the false premise of your enemy, and you argue on that false premise. It's like a person who says, I'm an atheist. My initial response to that is, no, you're not. You're not an atheist. I don't adopt their premise. Mm-hmm. I say Romans 1 says you're not an atheist. It says that you know God. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to live your life according to a set of standards that you can actually disappoint yourself. If you're an atheist and you don't believe there's any God in heaven, how can you disappoint yourself? Yeah. You're the standard, so you can do whatever you want. Yeah. You can go kill a baby, and that's a fine thing to do. Yeah. And so this is adopting their premise. It's adopting the premise that abortion is something that we can regulate, and abortion is healthcare. Yeah. And it's not saying we repudiate that. It is not true. We do not believe that you can kill babies. We do not believe that it's constitutional right. You need to abolish this now. Mm-hmm. That's the standard. And that's win-win. Yeah. Because either way, if they don't do it, you can say, look, voters, this is your candidate. This is your legislator. This is your politician. Mm-hmm. You should shame them. Be ashamed of this person. Mm-hmm. And if they do it, babies are saved. Yeah. And that's how you get cultural change. But you're not going to get cultural change apart from the conflict happening. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's all true. And that's where we're at right now, which I guess I'll just use as a segue to get into the Kansas abortion ban, which you talked about a little bit with April. She's sponsored. April Crummer is the one who sponsored the Kansas abortion ban. It is a true abolition bill. She authored it. She's not sponsored it. She is not a legislator. We are working on getting legislators, but we've had, like we've said before, it's been put forth for 4 years now. There's been times we've had sponsors. In the last 3 years, the number one reason that KFL or Republican leadership has, basically shut it down and killed it is because they don't want anything to distract from the Value Them Both Amendment. You guys have seen this tactic too. We have our poster child pro-life piece of legislation, and even if you want to come alongside it, like this is the part where we don't buy into the idea that we're all going to work together, because they're the ones that don't want to work with us. Mm-hmm. whatever. If I can't get you guys convinced to drop the value of them both amendment, at least run this abolition bill.
Yeah.
And it really would make a lot of sense in our state, because they're saying we're going to pass this amendment, the value of them both amendment, so that we can then have pro-life regulations that can abolish abortion eventually or whatever.
Yeah.
And okay, well, here's your chance. Right now, let's follow this right up. Let's get the momentum going.
Yeah.
We'll do we did all the hard work for you. We have it here. Just get us a couple sponsors. And no, we won't do anything because it will distract from the value of them both amendment. And you kind of sit here and go, how is this going to distract from the value of them both amendment if this is supposedly the end goal of the value of them both amendment? But it's not. Yeah. And that's the thing is, it's not their goal. And this is, again, we want to be gracious with everybody. We want to be able to, work with everyone, and we know that everyone's a little bit different. So if you're part of KFL, if you're in leadership, if you're someone here who's a part of this, you're part of the reason why this is happening, get with us, talk to us, let us know. Yeah, we'd love to sit down and chat with you. We're not going to change the principles that we have. We're not going to change our view on the value of them both because it's a concrete document. It's there. We know what it says. And we know what it will most likely do. But we want to be charitable. We want to understand why you guys are doing this. And I'm not going to try to make assumptions. But if you're in public leadership and you have a trend in what you've done, and that trend is that you've postponed justice, then I'm going to call you out for it. And we're going to call you out for it, and we're going to handle this the best way we can. We're going to handle it truthfully. And the fact of the matter is, if the end goal is to end abortion in our state and to love our preborn neighbors, then you'd be all over the Kansas abortion ban. Yeah. You're not. And so that's where we're at.
And if value them both existed for what it purports to exist, which is the end. Well, okay, in the bill, in the amendment, it doesn't say this, but it's being pushed as an opportunity for us to abolish abortion. Then there are no more perfect bills to run together than a bill of abolition and the amendment that allows for abolition. Except that there is the view in leadership that they conflict, and you have to ask why do they view it as a conflicting. So we do believe it would be an obstacle to abolition because, like we talked about earlier, if we tried to push abolition, they would say, no, you have the right to regulate, not abolish abortion. Yeah. Or in any other argument, they're liberal justices, they'll invent a right to abortion out of nothing in the Constitution. Yeah. So how much more out of this?
Yeah. And that's, again, the importance of framing the issue properly and just doing the righteous thing, because you're exposing folly. Like, you're exposing the foolishness of the amendment that you're dealing with. The fact that they think it's incompatible just shows that there's something inherently wrong with that amendment. If it isn't going to be a problem for abolition going forward, then this should not be an issue now. Right. Yeah. But you know that it's going to be an issue, so you're not going to get on board with this. And I think regardless of whether they had a bill that they were running, they wouldn't support your guys' bill.
No,
because they have this flawed pro-life paradigm where they've got a couple of things that they believe strongly. They have to obey the Supreme Court. You cannot criminalize abortion. You cannot punish the principal people involved, the mother and the father. You can't punish them. And as long as you have those ideas and several others, they're not gonna come on board with it. Yeah. And so we want you to, if you're a Christian, just take hold of your Bible, see what it says, and believe it. Yeah. It's that easy. Just believe what it says. Amen. And stop obeying evil tyrants who are bloodthirsty people who are not worthy to be respected as far as as far as them governing us at all.
Yeah. And one of the things that Scott Klusendorf has said, he's really objected to the idea that pro-lifers are regulationists. He does not like that term at all. But I think here we have it.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. We're straight up. We are here to regulate.
Yeah. And we're going to write in our amendment,
Constitution,
what do we want to do about abortion? We want to regulate it. And that is what we're going to write into this amendment. We want to be able to regulate abortion. Yep. And I've seen amendments similar to this where they actually say, we reserve the right to regulate or prohibit abortion. Yeah. I've seen that. We've got a bill kind of along those lines here in Oklahoma that we're going to have to be dealing with. Hopefully it doesn't get as far as in Kansas. Yeah. But even that one, at least it says regulate or prohibit. This doesn't even say that. Yeah. They just want to protect their right to regulate. Yeah. And why? This is where I don't know anyone up there. I don't want to speak to motives across the board, but I think it could be something along the lines of the same reason we were talking about earlier. they can campaign on regulating abortion forever.
Yeah.
You can regulate abortion in a trillion different ways, infinite amount of different ways to regulate abortion, and Republicans can keep running on that forever.
Yeah.
And that is certainly, I don't want to say that's why they're doing it, but that is an incentive on that side of it.
Yeah.
That could be.
Yeah. Well, if you guys are allowed to speculate like that, I'm going to speculate a guess at that too. I think possible motivation too is just that they don't want even a hint that they might be aiming to defy the Supreme Court. Like it's a sort of extreme cowardice where we don't want to even put a hint of that into our constitutional amendment because we're afraid of all the media pressure. We're afraid of some of the moderates among us not wanting to get on board. They don't even want to give a little bit of the impression that they might be gearing up to say, we're not going to listen to the Supreme Court on this. Right. If you have language that says, or prohibit, people are going, well, what about the Supreme Court said you can't, the Supreme Court of the United States says you can't do that. So I think there's possibly some underlying cowardice here where they don't want to have to deal with the kind of hate that comes from saying, let's defy the Supreme Court.
That may speak to the insanity you were talking about earlier of how is it harder to impeach a justice rather than change the entire Constitution, which is, I think the answer, at least partly, must be that if I stick my neck out to be one who's seeking impeachment for a justice, I'm personally suffering for that as a candidate. Whereas if we generically vote and put it to the Kansans to approve a value than both amendment, it's not on me. I'm not at risk.
Yeah, that's kind of the next, one of the bigger biblical issues I have with this. And you saw a similar thing on in Texas with the SB 8, where they kind of removed it from the legislators and the prosecutors and the DAs. They said, okay, if the individuals, if the citizens, if you want to sue, you can sue. And that's not what God says. God says, I have given the government the sword to bear against the evildoer. And that's, again, here we're seeing a similar thing, a little bit different. But again, we're trying to come to the people and say, okay, we don't want to be fully responsible for this. They don't need it. They don't need it. Okay, the Constitution is like most other state constitution, and it literally says you cannot deprive anyone of their right to life. Yeah. It's just, okay, the assumption here, we all know it, as that life begins at conception. Yeah. And either we're going to act like that and act like just sane people, or we're going to continue to cave to the insanity of the world, and then the legislators are going to cave to that and pass on this responsibility to the people. And it's not the people's responsibility to do this. The Constitution already secures the right to life. Yeah. It's the legislators' responsibility to protect that and enforce that, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, I actually had a good friend of mine ask the question about, do you guys think that a nationwide constitutional amendment to the Constitution of the United States, do you think that that's something that is required by abolitionism? And the answer is no. We would actually strenuously object to that because we don't believe that the Supreme Court has the right to play idiots on this. Yeah. They don't get to say, well, we kind of think it says you can get an abortion. Well, you're not reading the 14th Amendment. Right. You are being intentionally idiotic here, and you're giving us an opinion that is wrong. Yeah. And so you ought to be defied because the Constitution doesn't say that, and everyone is able to interpret it. Yeah. Anyone who goes and reads the 14th Amendment, who reads our Constitution, can tell this is what it says about human life. This is what it says about whether or not we should punish somebody for murdering another person. Yeah. And when we go about this sort of changing things every single time the Supreme Court says you can have an abortion, you have to do that with everything. If the Supreme Court says tomorrow you can rape 5-year-old girls, let's amend the Constitution. We got to do it. It's got to be done. Insane. No one would do that. Yep. Everyone would just say, no, we're not going to listen to you. You're being insane on this. Yeah,
yeah. And like on the same point of nullification, you guys have dealt with this down here about marijuana. Where right now, last year they almost passed legal medical marijuana in Kansas, and they might get it through this year. We were just talking to April on the phone down here, and she's been meeting with more legislators this session, and she's like, you guys are literally lining up to nullify our weed all over again. It's happening. Like straight up. We got more people who claim to be pro-life and to cherish life, and then they won't defy the courts on this, but they're lining up to defy the courts over marijuana. Yeah, same thing. We're hearing over and over and over again, and guys, I mean, if anybody's watching this and you think we're talking about you, and you don't agree with this, come tell us. I mean, honestly, I'd rather KFL leadership and the GOP leadership of Kansas come to me and say, hey, nope, that's not what we believe, and prove it. and I'll take back everything I said.
Right.
Repent with us
Yes.
and move forward towards justice. We're not here to create enemies. We're here to be realistic about what's going on in this world, to be light in the darkness, and there's just a lot of darkness around this issue from those who claim to be light. Yeah. And it's time for us to put an end to it. It's time for us to take the masks off and be honest about what's going on. Be honest about what you're trying to achieve. And if you want total abolition, if you want to love your preborn neighbors as yourselves, get behind the Kansas abortion ban. Or make your own. If it fulfills the requirements of an abolition bill and provides equal justice, I don't care whose name's on it. None of us do. I guarantee that. All we care is that it's done and that our preborn neighbors' lives are not being slaughtered.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, people tend to care a whole lot more about their ganja than their preborn neighbor. Got to have the devil's lettuce, you know what I'm saying?
That's an idol. I mean, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think an important question there is, again, why? Why are state representatives who will say all day, I can't defy Roe v. Wade, why will they defy Gonzalez v. Reich, the Supreme Court opinion that marijuana is rightfully prohibited by the federal government? Well, it's because the marijuana lobby is telling them, defy Gonzalez v. Reich. And the pro-life lobby is saying, obey Roe v. Wade.
Wow.
And so I think it all comes back to, in our case, Oklahomans for life, and in your guys' case, Kansans for life. That's, they lead the legislators on this. The legislators are not necessarily pro-life activists. Maybe a few of them were, but most of them aren't. They're just people who ran for office, and then they listen to whoever the loudest pro-life voice in the room is, which right now is Kansans for life. And so Kansans for life is driving the strategy on this stuff, and they are telling them, obey Roe v. Wade, just like here, they're doing the same thing here in Oklahoma. And so it all comes back to the pro-life lobbyists, the organizations. And that's why the politicians don't do the right thing. And sometimes what I hear from some pro-life people, not necessarily the organizations, but just people on social media will be, well, you abolitionists, you're so mean. And yeah, we would admit there are some bad politicians, but the pro-life groups are good. But it's like, no, the groups are leading the politicians. The groups are the problem, the pro-life organizations. And this is not to say that they're all as bad as Kansans for Life. There are pro-life groups that aren't as evil as Kansans for Life is. But there are many who are. And they are the main problem. They're the main reason that children are still murdered. Certainly in a state like Oklahoma, where we've got pro-lifers in control of everything. Every lever in our government is controlled by pro-lifers.
Yeah, and it's important, too, to remember, like, fear is contagious, but so is boldness. And when people see a righteous standard, that's really the thing that exposes the cowardice that is just permeating our culture. And, people are willing to be bold about marijuana because it's such an insignificant thing compared to abortion. It's such a small thing compared to abortion, and a lot of people tend to want it. They're okay with that.
It's crazy to think where we've come. If you go like 20 years ago and you talked about drugs, and you just see how much the culture shifted on that. 20 years ago, Oklahoma's got free weed. What? No, there's no way you would ever think of that happening, especially if it's still being a Republican majority state. But that's where we're at, and that's just how much culture shifts. And I mean, that's to me, it's shifted obviously for a much different reason for marijuana than what we're trying to shift it for the glory of God. But like you said, boldness. You stand up. People will follow that. There are people that will recognize that, and sometimes we just need to exhort each other onto that.
So you guys have some real exciting plans on the schedule here that we want people to know about. So why don't you guys talk about what you've got going on coming up here?
Yeah, yes, that's me.
You got
the event organizer, kind of. So, the big thing we have going on is our Abolish Abortion Conference and Rally. On March 14th is the conference. It's going to be in Topeka at Community Church. And then the rally is at the Capitol Steps the following day, 9 a.m. So we have more information about that at our website, which I'm sure will be linked places, but it's amks.org. And just kind of an overview on that. It's a one-day conference. We got a lot packed into it, kind of the typical abolitionist people everybody knows about. So our speaker lineup is Dusty Deaver, Russell Hunter, John Speed, Kevin Myers, he's out of Kansas City, and then April Comer, the author of the bill. We have C.R. Cowley come in, Joseph Silk, Brett Baggett. So we have a lot packed into one day. It's probably the busiest conference that I've ever put into one day. So we're still trying to finagle the schedule there to not try to kill everybody. So that's so the big things we're doing there. I know just you guys being here in Oklahoma, we have support from Missouri. We really do need out-of-state support. We just do. You can just support us by coming. Registration is going to be really affordable. I think it's like $15 for a single register and $25 for a family. And we just need people there. We need, right now I think we have like probably maybe 10 to 15 churches who are either fully embracing abolition or right there, pretty close to it. So we just need to encourage them. I know there's been a handful of pastors who are all on board with it, and they're isolated, they're alone, and that's this is just one way. Annually, we can all come together and encourage one another. So I know the speaker lineups are going to be great. I've heard these guys speak. You guys have heard them speak. They're kind of your list of speakers too. We just kind of stole stuff from your conference. So, so a lot of the typical topics are going to have covered. If you're familiar with abolitionism, it's probably going to be pretty familiar for you. But there's a few things, we wanted to address. So like one of the different things we're going to do in this conference is the first afternoon session is going to be a breakout session. So Kevin Myers and Clifton Bogie are the ones that do the clinic outreach in Kansas City. They're going to have one of those workshops, and it's going to be a little more hands-on, just a smaller group of people so they can feel more comfortable and talk to and engage with their speaker. Yeah. And then C.R. Calley is going to be having one of those, and he's going to be talking about IVF. I know a lot of people have questions about in vitro fertilization, so that's a topic we wanted to touch on as well. And then April or one of our leaders will be tag teaming a presentation on the Kansas abortion ban and the value of them both amendment and where we're at with all that. So we're going to try to make this as easy to get through as we can, but it'll be a long day. And if someone wanted to say, hey, how can we come support you guys? The biggest thing is the rally the next day, just like your guys' Abolition Day. Coming to the Capitol steps. We'll be meeting on the South Steps at 9 a.m. And we'll probably have more local speakers for that and just kind of have quick little blips, everybody up there, just exhorting our legislators on. So that's something if you want to come to, that would be great to have a lot of people. Our goal is to get 1,000 people there. It's pretty ambitious for us this year. So that's on the schedule. And do you have something you want to?
Well, I was just going to ask, do you guys, can you take donations through your website? Okay.
Yes. We have a donation page up, and we also have a fundraiser for the conference itself. We're trying to raise $15,000 for this conference. It just takes a lot. You guys know this, but it takes a lot of money to try to get material out there. That's the biggest thing. It's just trying to print stuff, trying to invite people. I mean, to get 1,000 people there, we probably have to invite 10,000 at least. So. It's just a lot of work, and our entire organization, everybody's volunteer based. So, just the time we have to put into it and try to make this the most that we can. So there's a link on our page that you can donate to if you'd love to. We'd, just appreciate any support you can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And if there's Kansas people listening here, if there's just any of our general listeners, this is an effort that we really want supported. So give to this campaign. We really want you guys to be well funded for this and have a good impact there. There's so much money that goes to so much stuff that is so worthless, and we know our listeners, they're a little bit more careful with their pocketbook than a lot of people are. But if you're sort of a normie pro-lifer who's looking at the legislation and the campaigns going on in Kansas, and you're someone who's giving money to various pro-life organizations in that state, stop what you're doing and give it to you guys instead. That is the main thing that you can be doing as far as your financial contribution is to give to you guys, and then to show up and be the salt and light of the earth and bring the gospel into conflict with abortion in Kansas.
Friends, don't let friends donate to Right to Life.
Yeah.
There we go.
So to support these guys financially, support them by being there. It's going to be really good speakers. These guys are doing a really good job in Kansas. And so please make your way to Topeka, Kansas, March 14th and 15th. I'll be there. That's my birthday, actually. I'll be spending my birthday with you guys.
Pi Day.
Let's go.
Pi Day. Yep. So really looking forward to that, and I hope you guys will join them at that conference.
So the conference is the big thing for this year. But then alongside that, there's just so many little things that we're trying to do. Like one thing that we're really focusing on is getting pastors and churches together. So this month we're going to host, it'll probably be before this episode comes out, but just so you know, if we might have future ones, we're just trying to get pastors to come together. So we have a luncheon with Bill Askell coming up to speak for it.
Awesome.
Just trying to get everyone together. And our goal isn't to get this huge umbrella group of everybody, but it's to try to get the faithful pastors and faithful Christians who want to be in this fight and want to do God's will. Just try to get you guys together, meet everybody, encourage one another, and exhort each other onto good works. And then if you're in our area and we haven't met you, we'd love to have you come and be a part of what we're doing. We go to the abortion clinics, try to go once a month. And we've tried to be really intentional about our time. Just with 3-hour drives to the clinics, 2-hour drives to the clinics. We try to either host worship services there, or try to create as big of an event as we can to get as many people there and just to see it, just to experience it, and to get involved. And then we do cultural outreach into our own city in Manhattan there. So if you're
big college town.
Yeah, it's K-State. So if you've ever partied in Aggieville, you come over there, and usually once or twice a month. Sometimes we're out there street preaching or just seeding the culture and talking to people. So hey, if you see us there, we'll call you out if you're partying too hard, but otherwise you can come party with us and preach the gospel.
Yeah, quick story on that. We just even last week we evangelized separate from AIM stuff, just gospel-centered evangelism, which obviously we want AIM to be gospel-centered. But we have met multiple people now, but just last week we met another guy who has witnessed our sign holding, our witnessing, our chalking, and things throughout Aggieville because he works there. Aggieville's kind of the bar district, and so he's like, "You're the guys that hold the abortion signs," and so it's reaching people. It's pretty cool. I mean, even my neighbor. I was talking to my neighbor, and he's like, "Yeah, there's these kind of strange people downtown holding these anti-abortion signs." I was like, "That's me. That's me.
We're the weird guys."
And he wasn't that freaked out, and it was kind of an opportunity to go, "Oh, you're normal." And I was like, "Hey, no, this is normal to care about babies and lives and honoring."
It's
the Lord.
actually unusual to do anything other.
Exactly.
Than that, it's there's an Auschwitz in your town. And you're sitting there quietly while the smokestacks go up to the sky.
Exactly.
That's the situation you're in, and to be anything other than a sort of Sophie Scholl in that environment, sticking your own neck out, you're unloving to your neighbor.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just like to make that final exhortation. I know a lot of people that I've spoke to in our community in different churches, and a lot of people have either shown interest in coming out, they appreciate what we're doing, but just something isn't connecting, isn't going. And I don't know everybody's restrictions, I don't know everybody's situation, but I can't recommend enough. Love your preborn neighbors as yourselves. Get out to the abortion clinics when you can. And call your representatives, call your legislators up, talk to them about the Kansas abortion ban, and just get with us, figure out more what you can do. We can always use more help. We're literally taking on an entire state. We're a local organization. We're going to stay local. We're not trying to build this big deal with big salaries. We're all volunteer, but we have a burden to love all of our preborn neighbors, and because the states that the laws that are written in Topeka allow for children to be murdered all across our state. We have to be concerned with things all across our state. So if you're somewhere and you're like, "Man, I want to do something like this," get with us. We will help you.
And if you know someone in Kansas, put that person in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to get to know more people. On that note, we've had some people who really want to join our organization, like formally as members, and we only allow that within churches in our area. People that we know are part of local churches and are accountable to their elders. We really do want to be careful about that. We want to make sure that the church is the one driving this. We're not a bunch of solo people trying to just run our own agenda. We are driven by the body of Christ, and apart from that, we really are not being gospel-centered. We are really not preaching the full counsel of God and obeying Him completely. So if people ask, "Hey, when should you let us be part of AIM?" It's not because we don't want more people to join us. It's probably because either you're too far out of our area, or we've kind of designated which churches are going to be a part of us or can be a part of us. But we want to help you. We still want to. There's so many things we can still do together, and we can still work together. But that's just something also about our organization that we've tried to maintain is, we're here. We're going to work in our own community. We're going to impact everywhere else as much as we can, but it starts here. It starts at home where we're at.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you guys wanted to address? I think that covers it.
I think it covers a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're linking to all your guys' links in the description. And thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you.
Great.
Yep. And this is the final episode of January, so we have a drawing to do.
Yeah, we do. We're doing this one, right?
Pass forward. Yeah, that one there.
All right. A drawing.
Do you guys put extra things in there to make it look like you have more supporters than you have?
No, that's all real.
Wow.
That's all real.
Yeah, we keep having to press it down as we go here.
Gotta get a bigger bowl.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this, I'll just put this, close to that one. This is, I guess I can't talk right now. This is the front of the T-shirt that we are going to be giving all the attendees of the Abolition Now conference, which is February 5th through the 8th. So we hope you guys will join us for that, because you will all get this T-shirt. And that is the only place. We're not going to put this on the store or anything like that. So the only place to get this is if you come to the conference.
That's right. Valley, would you do the honors?
Oh, I would be honored. Yes.
Awesome.
Gotta get deep. Here we go.
Go all the way to the bottom.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
good.
Okay. Do you want me to? You want to read it?
No,
No,
go
you
ahead.
do.
Dude.
Oh,
This is you.
wow.
Yeah.
No.
Does it say Valley Scharping on it?
It's Valley Scharping. Okay. Jonathan Declots.
Jonathan.
Jonathan
From
DeClot.
Seattle.
That's awesome. He's one of the first abolitionists I ever met, because I went to an event in Seattle and met Jonathan there.
Cool.
Jonathan's great.
Nice.
I'm glad Jonathan is the winner this month. Jonathan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your
Did it.
support and for all the hard work and labor. I know this goes for a lot of people in this bowl, but especially Jonathan. He's been someone who's been very faithful in evangelizing and exposing the horror of abortion in the Seattle area. So
Yeah.
we are very thankful for Jonathan. As we are for all of our donors. So thank you so much, you guys, for supporting and become a donor, and we will get your name in this bowl, and you might win next month.
Yep.
So
This has been another episode of the Liberator podcast, where we're committed to being as harsh as truth and as uncompromising as justice. We'll see you next week.